So this tutorial is kind of building off of the previous tutorial that I made, and these are some of the examples that I made in that video. But this is just going to be how to shade and color the eyes in different lighting situations. Again, if anybody's wondering what kind of brushes that I'm using, I am using Loish's brush set. Check out Loish on DeviantArt, she's got all of her brushes up for free. And I am using the oil pastel. So first we're gonna start with a more deep set eye with a double lid. What I like to do first is just go ahead and shade in this entire region, because this is kind of the shadow that the brow ridge is making. And then I'm even going to bring some shading down into here. And that is shading from the top eyelid. Then we're gonna take an eraser and kind of cut out this part just a little bit. And we're also going to take a little bit of highlight out of the center of the top eyelid here. And then soften up these edges a little bit. We're gonna worry about blending later. Right now we're just putting down values. And then I'm going to combine those layers. That's not necessary for everybody. I just like to combine my layers because I don't like having a billion of them. Now, since the eye is a globe, it's going to follow the same rules that a sphere will have when you shade it. So as we get further back here, it's gonna get a little bit darker. You wanna be careful with this and not make it too dark, because it can get a little bit scary, especially if you're doing a more cartoony style. Because when you're doing more cartoonish eyes, then you don't quite want to make them look like they're globes. Anyway, I'm going to add a tiny bit of shading onto the edge here and onto the bottom to show that that has volume as well. And a little bit more right here where this part of the eye begins to slope into the crease. Add a little bit of value right there just for fun. Right, and then we're gonna combine again. Now, what I'm going to do is set this to a multiply layer, make a layer underneath it. I have mine set to purple because I really like purple. You could use really any color you wanted. I might not go with yellow or green. I find that tends to make things look really gross, but any other color is fine. So I'll pick a skin tone here, which is right here, why not? And start coloring underneath. And again, the layer with the purple is set to multiply on top of it. So I'm just gonna fill this in real quick. Okay, cool. And the white of your eye, realistically, is not completely white. If you're going for a cartoony style, it's totally fine to make it totally white, unless you have like some really heavy shadows going on. But I'm gonna make mine kind of a grayish tan. Now I'm gonna decrease the opacity. Now I'm gonna make a layer on top of it and start to paint over it. This is just my personal way that I go about painting. You might have a different one. So I'm gonna start blending out these colors and phasing out the lines. And I'm even going to take out these eyelashes here and start to kind of incorporate the waterline into the rest of the eye. And you can apply a waterline without using an actual line and just use the difference in shadows here. Or you could even make it the same color as the rest and just imply the waterline by putting eyelashes there. But in any case, unless the character is wearing a lot of eyeliner, there's not going to be a line there. So slowly start phasing out all of these lines that are happening. This middle part of the eye here might be a little bit lighter because it's a globe. What I'm doing to blend this is I've got the opacity set to, when I press harder, it makes it more opaque. And then when I press really soft, it's only about half the opacity. So I'm just pressing the Alt key, which is the color picker. I believe on Paint Tool's side, the color picker is right click. Some programs you can even assign which button you want it to be. But anyway, I'm just color picking and then putting down a very light shade and then color picking that shade that I made. And by doing that over and over, I can start to create like a blendy looking gradient. I'll just keep doing that. This part is very round. You can emphasize the roundness by adding highlights in that shape. You can also use kind of an airbrush tool. Yeah, that's working a lot better for this part. There's that. I'm also gonna put A little bit of shading down here in the eye bag region, which is my favorite part to draw. But I'm gonna leave this part here without any shading on it. Because this part of the eye, this little corner here, tends to pick up light. So I'm just slowly going through and defining the things that I want to stand out a little bit more, blending all my colors together. Well, let's choose our eye color. Let's make it purple, to the surprise of no one. So put it on a multiply layer, brush that on with a different brush, this one, yes. Okay, cool. And combine again because I'm a monster. Uh-oh. Nope, not at all what I wanted to happen. Combine all my layers in the right order. Okay, there we go. Now I'm just going to put sort of a faint shape down for the eyebrow, much lighter than I want the actual eyebrow to be. And I tend to make it a little bit lighter toward this end, and then a little bit darker toward the inside part. For the iris, this is a really fun part because there's so many different ways to do it. And I'm sure because so many of us have grown up on anime, most of you have very sparkly, detailed eye styles. When you're going for more of a realistic look, you want to keep it as simple as you can. That's no fun. So I like to put this little like ring inside it right here. And then the iris is going to reflect light differently from the whites of your eyes. So the shaded part is going to be much darker right here. And it's gonna kind of blend into the pupil. Realistically, the pupil is supposed to be black, I think, because it's absorbing all of the light or almost all of the light that comes into it. But I think that looks boring. So I like to put a little bit of color into the pupil as well. Let's add some highlights. Very light, very bright, a little bit pinker, just for fun. And since the pupil is set down into the iris, there's this little lip here, like another little waterline right at the bottom. So the bottom of this is gonna catch light because your pupil is actually a hole. It's not like a spot, it's a hole in your eye, which is, it's weird to think about. Anyway, I'm gonna put another little highlight right here. And these little lines that go outward. Also, people with light eyes will sometimes have darker edges to them. Now let's start adding in the eyelashes. I'm gonna make mine a dark purple because it matches the shading and the color of the eye. Try to avoid using black for eyelashes. It kind of just, it gets way too intense. So unless the whole picture is very, very dark, try not to use black on the eyelashes. Maybe like a darker version of the hair color or the eye color like I'm doing. So I'm putting a little bit of eyeliner here, or just to imply a line of eyelashes. And I'm not going to do that on the bottom. I'm just gonna put these little like notches here. And then eyelashes will spread outward from the eye, like I mentioned in my last tutorial. So the middle one is gonna be pretty much angling toward you. And then the one over here is going to be angled away. Now, if you do eyelashes like this, they tend to look a little bit fake. So I make mine thicker toward the base to give the illusion of a bunch of eyelashes sticking together. Make them a bunch of different lengths for some interest. You can make them much lighter or less opaque toward the end. And they'll kind of get more concentrated in the corners. Yay, it's actually starting to look like an eye now. I'm trying really hard not to go crazy with the eyelashes, but it's hard. Okie dokie. For the bottom eyelashes, I try to make them a little bit lighter, a little bit shorter, a little bit fainter. Just don't emphasize them quite so much, but they follow pretty much the same rules as the top ones. And if you want to get really fancy with it, eyelashes also cast shadows, so you can put a little bit of shadows right here that connect to where the eyelashes touch the face. Now I'm going to play back the the corners of the waterline right here. I don't want them to stand out too much. Now my favorite part, which is highlights. Oh, I love that part. So since eyes are spheres, technically they should always be a circle. I like to make them very small, very concentrated, and very bright. But there are no rules. Just make it whatever shape you want. So making this tiny little hard triangle shape. And then I'm going to take this airbrush tool and just make a slight little gradient around it to make it look like it's glowing just a little bit. I'm actually feeling like the colors on this are a little bit off, so I'm going to make another layer, overlay, and do kind of an orange, and just see what happens. I'm not gonna mess around with it. Cool, I think that looks much nicer. So I'm going to finish blending this crease right here, really quick. And then I'm gonna talk about eyebrows. Eyebrows can get a little bit complicated because the hairs go in a bazillion different directions. I usually have mine point this way at the corner and then slowly kind of turn on their sides until they're pointing the other way. And these guys will point up. I did that in black and I did not intend to. Darker color and start filling in some hair-like shapes. Just make strokes in the direction that the hairs should go. You can also take the skin tone and start like cutting into the shape. It's called like subtractive shading, or I don't know. Then you can add some little stray eyebrow hairs, because nobody's an effect. Nice. And then especially from afar, it's going to look pretty natural, even if it doesn't look super natural way up close. I didn't really address the tear duct over here, which should be a little bit pinker. So let's go to do multiply or overlay, and then get sort of a more red color. I'm going to put it on top here. Now there's very slight variations in the skin around the eye. So you can make it a little bit blushier around here. If you do too much though, it's gonna look like they've been crying or they got pink eye or something like that. So just be very sparing with that. If you really wanted to, you could add a tiny little highlight right here on the waterline. Underneath here, and add another highlight here. Who cares? Just add them everywhere. The more highlights you add, the more it will look like a sad cat. So be very sparing with them. If you have lighting coming from different directions, that's going to affect the sphere of your eye. So if you have lighting coming from, say, this direction over here and pointing at it, then your shading is going to be, there's going to be a highlight at the corner here, and then it's slowly going to get darker as it goes back. Again, be very, very careful with this if you're doing a cartoony style. It will look so creepy. And also try not to have the shading of the white of the eye be more dramatic than the shading of the skin around it, because that will also make it look kind of creepy. So anyway, people with monolids or just general hooded eyes, they tend to be a little bit more extended right here in this region. So instead of putting a bunch of shading right here like we did with the deep set eyes, we're just going to put it right here, where the bridge of the nose begins to meet up with the eye region. So we'll put that there, and also a little bit on the underside of the eyelid here. This shadow might be more dramatic or less depending on how much their eyelid covers their eye. And I'll put a little bit of shading right here underneath this eye bag. And then we'll continue on the shading right here to make this part pop. And of course we give it the globe treatment so it gets darker as it goes back. And then we decrease the opacity so it doesn't look wild. I'm going to color in this eye so we can talk about how to shade darker eyes. Now we're going to do the same thing we did earlier, which is set this to multiply, put a layer underneath it. You can, actually I'm gonna show you a different way to do this. So we'll do this one in a slightly different way, which is instead of setting this one to multiply, we're going to put a layer on top and set that one to multiply. And that basically does the exact same thing. So let's take the same skin tone. And again, we're gonna choose sort of a tannish color for the white. Now I'm gonna start the process of blending this out. And what I'm trying to do is to keep this part kind of simple, because I don't wanna make all the folds and the curves seem too extreme, because I don't wanna make the geography of the face too extreme. So I'm just going to start coming in and gently blending everything out. Especially on the bottom lid here, I don't want it to be too dramatic unless I want them to look dead, which I don't. So very soft gradient going from dark to light up here. Now if a person has a fold over this part of their eye, you can bring this part down. And the part that's going to pick up highlight will be this little spot right here. So let's add a little bit of highlight right there, just for funsies. And then continue to blend out all the lines. I'm sure there's easier ways to do lineless painting, but this is the way that I do it, so. So now going to shade dark eyes. And dark eyes are almost never completely black, even if they kind of appear to be. So we're gonna take just a very dark purplish color, because that's what color our shadows are. We're gonna blend it in. Now, dark eyes can have undertones of gray or blue or brown and yellow and orange and blah, blah, blah. So just pick one and do the same shading that we did to the lighter eye without going completely black. In some cases you can see the pupil, in some cases not. I think I'm gonna leave out the pupil for now. When a dark eye has a very bright light shown into it, you can get some really nice colors going. I'm just gonna add a little bit here. And this curve right here is gonna imply that there's a pupil there. Now again, we're gonna add a little bit of blushy blush. Same colors, multiply. Nice, now let's add some eyelashes. Again, don't go completely black. Let's grab the same color that we used for this eye and start adding some eyelashes in. Now, I chose not to really define the waterline too much, because I'm going to do that with the eyelashes. Now, you can shade a monolid like this, and you can also add a tiny little crease here. Don't go too nuts with all of the gradients that we did on this eye. This one only needs very minimal shading to imply that there's a small crease there. Sometimes I like to do this with eyelashes that go down, especially if the person has light eyelashes. I think it looks very neat. I'm not gonna do that this time though. Not everyone with a monolid will have eyelashes that point downward. And if you have curly eyelashes, they're gonna come back up like this. But that's just how I chose to demonstrate it right here. Let's add another little highlight right here. Wonderful. And now to do the eyebrow. If you wanted to, you can add a few more highlights. Take this light color here, make it a little bit lighter, and then very gently on the upper eyebrow region, since this person has a very pronounced brow region, you can put a big highlight right there, yeah, right here if you want to, but that might be a little bit overkill. You know what? No, that looks fine. I never know how anything's gonna look until I start doing it. And then right here in the corner, and also right here underneath the eye. Same thing with up here. Put a little bit of a highlight up here. This person doesn't really have a pronounced brow region as much. And then a highlight more so in the middle here that comes all the way down to the fold. Again, not too dramatic so that we don't over define this part of the face. And then we can also put a little bit of highlight right here, right underneath where the slope of the eye bag comes out. I'm gonna add a little bit more shading because of the eyelashes, casting shadows. Again, if you want to apply this to a more cartoony style, just be a little bit more cautious with the shading on the whites of the eyes. You can make everything a little bit brighter. Try to cut down on the shading and wrinkles and just really focus on those eye sparkles. That's the key, the eye sparkles. So I hope this was helpful. Again, if you have any questions, if I didn't explain anything well enough or my wording was confusing, put your question down in the comments and I'll try my best to elaborate. I'll shade a few more examples right here and you can enjoy the speed paint just to maybe give you some more ideas. If you'd like to see more of my work, literally over 1,000 posts are on Patreon of stuff that I haven't put anywhere else, or high-res files of the artworks that I upload here. Sometimes you get to see speed paints early. I announce there if I plan to do a live stream in advance. And it also just helps me pay rent and live my life and keep doing art. I also have a site, kiwibyrd.com, where you can see my portfolio. And you can also get in contact with me if you would like to talk about commissions, which are open right now. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.